was a bright morning in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. The streets pulsed with life. The smell of roasted plantains drifted through the air. Mixing with the sharp tang of spices, vendors sang out their prices, stalls overflowing with mangoes, peppers, and fabrics that caught the sunlight and flashes of color. Children darted between bicycles and wheelbarrows, their laughter cutting through the noise off bargaining. Among the crowd walked a man who drew little notice. No suit, no dolls, no bodyguards marched at his side. Just a tall figure moving slowly, stopping, often to greet, to listen, touch. But this was no ordinary man. It was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, known for his humility. He preferred the streets to palaces, presents to ceremony. That morning, after meeting farmers at sunrise, he had cautioned to wander the central market alone. His security trailed 3 streets back, disguised as market shoppers, and 1 aide kept a quiet distance. A compromise Ibrahim had insisted on so that the people would see him as their brother, not as a guarded ruler. He was about to pass a row of fabric stalls when something stopped him. Not a voice, not a shout, but silence. He turned.
Out.
Near the edge of Asmel crowd stood a girl, no more Thansavan. Her dress was worn but tidy, her braids tied with care. In her hands shelled a piece of cardboard. The words written in shaky, uneven letters. "Please help my mother. She is sick." 6 words, no request for money, no cry for pity, only a child's plain, desperate plea. Ibrahim's chest tightened. It wasn't Inli the sign. It was her eyes, dry boutivy, carrying tears that refused to fall. Behind them was courage, dignity, and a quiet desperation. She wasn't begging. She was standing as if this was her last chance to be heard. That Poseidon stepped forward slowly. That girl noticed and lowered her sign. Suddenly shy, clutching the cardboard to her chest, as though she had broken some rule. Him crouched until his eyes met hers. His voice was steady, gentle, almost fatherly. "Hello, little one. Don't be afraid. Can you tell me what's happening?" For a moment, she only bit her lip. Then, in a whisper nearly lost in the market noise, she answered, "Me mum, she's very sick. We can't buy medicine. I just wanted to help." Those words struck harder than any speech Ibrahim had heard in Parliament. He had seen shortages written in reports, columns of numbers on budgets, but never like this. Never in the trembling voice of a child holding cardboard. He didn't pull out his wallet. Didn't make promises. Instead, he asked softly, "Where do you live?" She looked surprised, then pointed down a dusty road in the distance. "Not far," she murmured. Ibrahim nodded. Extending his hand, he said, "Show me your mother. Let's go together." The market seemed to hold its breath. After a pause, the girl slipped her small hand into his, her fingers curled around his, fragile yet firm. And just like that, the walk began. A girl with a cardboard sign leading her president down the road of her life. They walked side by side through the winding alleys of Ouagadougou. Fatu's small hand gripped his tightly as noise of the market faded behind them. The moment felt almost unreal. Oakland leading her president down dusty lanes, her head barely reaching his west. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across rusted rooftops and narrow stalls. Children chased each other, laughing as they played with toys made from wire and bottle caps. At first Fatu was silent. Who wouldn't be overwhelmed? Walking beside the most powerful man in the country. But Ibrahim did not rush her. He matched her pace, calm and steady, letting her feel safe. His voice was gentle when he finally spoke. "What's your name?" She kept hers low. "Fatu. That's a beautiful name," he said with a soft smile. "Tell me, how long has your mother been sick?" Fatu hesitated, then whispered, "A few weeks." She used seto, sew clothes. But then she started cowing. She couldn't work anymore. "No, don't have money." The words came like broken pieces she wished she didn't, Haveto say. Ibrahim listened without interruption, his silence full of attention. Every fragment struck him more deeply than any statistic ever cowled. They passed crumbling cinder-block houses. A woman stirred cassab over a fire. Barefoot children dashed across the uneven ground. Poverty weighs very where, yet in each face he glimpsed a quiet strength, a dignity untouched by hardship. Do you go to school, Fatu? He hissed gently. She shook her head. No, Tanamor. I used to, but then we couldn't pay for books. The answer hit him hard. How many others like her? How many voices lost in silence? The road narrowed, twisting toward a fragile shelter patched. With wood and corrugate middle, Fatu pointed quietly. That's our house. It was more shelter than home, but it stood. A thin curtain swayed in the doorway as they entered. Inside, Thea was still and dim, though careful like upped. On a thin mattress laid a cross-cracked cement. A woman tried to rise when she heard them. Her body was frail, her face hollowed by sickness. Ma'am, Ibrahim said gently, stepping forward. Please don't get up. The woman squinted, recognition dawning slowly, disbelief in her voice. Mr. President, her words were barely a whisper, surprise mixed with the fear of Sumian Ellenfort. Yes, Ibrahim nodded, lowering himself beside her. I met your daughter today. She brought me here. She's very brave. Her lips trembled. I didn't know. What to say? I didn't think Kanyon would come. Ibrahim took her hand gently. You don't need to say anything. What matters now is that you get better. Well, make sure you have what you need. Shh. By the doorway, Fatu stood wide, clutching her cardboard. Sig-like it was the only thing holding Thema Mint in place. Do you have enough food? Clean water? Ibrahim asked, scanning the room. The woman shook her head weakly. We try, but it's been hard. Ibrahim pulled a small phone from his pocket. His tone shifted calm, bodged with urgency. Marie, I need a medical. Team here immediately. Food, water, basic supplies.
Yes.
This family cannot wait. A clear voice replied, Yes, Mr. President. We'll be there in 15 minutes. He hung up. The silence that followed was no longer one of helplessness, but of change beginning to toster. Ibrahim stayed seated, speaking softly with the woman. He asked of other, sowing her life before illness, and listened with patient respect, then headed to Fatu. What's your favorite subject in school? Her face lit up faintly. Math. I like numbers. Smart girl, he smiled. Maybe one digit will help me balance the national budget. For the first time, she giggled, a small bright sound thought. The dim room with light, her mother's eyes filled with tears at the sight. And in that fragile shelter on Thessady's edge, Ibrahim Traoré was no longer just a president. He was simply a man, kneeling on cracked cement, bearing witness to the quiet strength of his people. Something shifted in that small home, not in politics or power, but in purpose. The crunch of tires on gravel broke the silence. Fatu rushed to Theaterway, just as a white van pulled up to her and her mother. It felt almost like a miracle.
For medical.
Workers stepped out, 2 nurses, a doctor, and a coordinator. Their steps were quick but steady, every movement filled with calm urgency. At the front was Marie, a woman with kind eyes, and a clipboard pressed firmly to her chest. She had worked with President Ibrahim for years, but she had never heard such urgency in his voice as had that morning. This is Theplis, Ibrahim said. Meeting her at Theodore, its expression was calm, but Histon allowed no delay. Marie nodded and stepped inside. Her face softened instantly. The cracked walls, the thin mattress, the frail woman trying to rise despite her weakness. She had seen this tree too many times before, but it never hurt any less. The doctor knelt beside Fatu's mother, pressing a stethoscope to her back, listening to labored breaths, checking her pulse. Her cough shook the quiet room. That's a severe respiratory infection, he said, his voice low but certain. Advanced but treatable. She's gone too long without care. Well, stabilize her now. Faticling to the doorway, her voice trembling. Will my mom be okay? The doctor turned and gave her a small, reassuring smile. She's strong, just like you. We'll do everything we can. The team moved quickly. An IV was set, antibiotics prepared, fluids given. Marie unpacked a box of supplies, bottles of water, sacks of rice, beans, bars of soap, warm blankets. From the bottom, she lifted a small bundle wrapped in cloth and handed it to Fatu. "This is for you." Fatu unwrapped it carefully. Inside were new notebooks, pencils, and a brightly colored storybook. For the first time that day, her eyes lit up. The heavy weight she carried seemed to ease, if only for a moment. Outside, neighbors had gathered, whispering as they pointed toward Theven and the uniforms. Word spread quickly. "The president is here." Inside, Ibrahim sat on a low stool, still holding the sick woman's hand. She tried to speak, her voice weak and raw. "Mr. President, we don't want to be a burden." His gaze stayed steady, his words firm yet kind. "You are not a burden. You're the reason we build this country. You and your daughter are the heart of Burkina Faso. My duty is to make sure Uwa are never forgotten." The woman's lips quivered as a tear slid down her cheek. By the doorway, Fatu watched insolence, her wide eyes filled with awe. It wasn't only that help had come, it was who had come. The man whose face hung in schools and government of Fes was now kneeling beside her mother like neighbor, like family. Nearly an hour later, the doctor confirmed her mother was stable enough to remain at home under observation. She would need medication and steady food, but the worst had passed. Relief filled the small room like a breath of fresh air. Marie stepped closer to Ibrahim, lowering her voice. "Sir, this is Traore. There are hundreds, maybe thousands, just like her." Ibrahim nodded slowly. His face carried the weight, butalso, a growing resolve. "I know this isn't just about one house. It's about every forgotten street in this city." As he rose to leave, Fatu stepped forward. In her hands was the same cardboard sign she had held in the market. She offered it to him, her voice soft but steady. "Now thank you, Mr. President. I don't think I need this anymore." Ibrahim accepted the sign with both hands. He didn't fold it or set it aside. He held it as if it were a flag. "You were brave today, Fatu," he said lently. "You reminded me what matters most." Then he turned to Marie. "We start there, this street, this neighborhood. Let this be the first ripple." As the medical team packed their supplies, and the neighbors stood quietly in respect, the van rumbled away down the dusty road. Fatu and her mother watched until it disappeared. Their hearts were still pounding, but something had stayed behind. Not just medicine, but hope. And hope travels fast in Burkina Faso. That very day, it traveled faster than ever. Within hours, photos began to appear on social media. The president sitting in a motorhome, his hand clasped around a little girl's, a medical team bent over a frail woman, and a cardboard sign with 6 simple, haunting words. "Please help me, mother. She is sick." Marie, who had quietly taken the photos, shared on an A-line with a short caption. "Leadership is listening. This is how change begins." The response was instant. By nightfall, the images had swept across country. Farmers in distant villages, teachers in small schools, students scrolling on their phones in crowded dormitories. All saw the same story, and all felt the same stirring inside. If one little girl could be heard, maybe everyone could. The next morning, a group of women in a villagetu, hours away, gathered under a baobab tree. With baskets and laughter, they organized a food drive. By noon, Youth in Bobo Dioulasso announced a free health clinic. In the capital, universitants set up a literacy workshop for children who had never stepped into a classroom. One small act of compassion had sparked a wave of action. Inside the presidential palace, Ibrahim called an emergency meeting. His voice carried no only resolve. The financier cleared his throat. "President, this is noble, but where will the money come from? Our coffers are already thin." A provincial governor ratted carefully. "And how do we ensure fairness? Too often, resources vanish before reaching the people." For a moment, the room grew heavy with doubt. Ibrahim leaned forward. His words were measured, but strong. "We'll begin with a modest emergency budget from contingency funds. Public donation account will be opened fully transparent. 2 trusted newses will deliver aid, and every distribution will be signed off by local councils, not bias alone. That way the people themselves will guard against misuse. He looked around the table. We cannot just react. We must turn this moment into a movement. The room fell silent. Then slowly heads began to nod. A week later, Ibrahim stood before cameras. This was no ordinary briefing. His hands trembled slightly, not with nerves, but with conviction. In his grasp was the same cardboard sign now framed in glass. With a panda, Fatu and her mother is not an isolated event, he said. This sign written by a child's hand speaks for millions, and we must answer it with action. He paused, letting the words settle. Then he announced a new initiative, Solidarity Hands. It will begin here in Ouagadougou, and it will reach every corner of our nation. No family should be invisible. No child's hold carry this kind of burden alone. The plan was simple but powerful. Built in 3 pillars: healthcare, education, and food security. Communities themselves would lead in identifying those in need. And Ibrahim pledged to visit one Forcanigurd each month in person. The country erupted with energy.
How to buy?
Bulletin boards filled with flyers for free medical checkups.
Volunteers organized meal distributions, sewing classes upon for unemployed mothers. Socio-media turned into a stream of good deeds. Small local actions inspired by young girls' courage. And at the heart of it all were Fatu and her mother. With steady care, her mother grew stronger. One afternoon, a journalist found her, Ina. Small garden tending rows off vegetables grown from donated seeds. Shell looked up with quiet pride. I never thought something like this could have pentoes, she said. But now, I want to help others the way we were helped. Nearby, under the shade of a mango tree, Fatu sat, with her school books open. Beside her lay a new backpack, a gift from another student her age, living across country. She looked up shyly and spoke, her voice steady. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher. Want to help children understand what kindness means. She didn't know it yet, but Shoa is already teaching, not with chalk or books, but with courage, dignity, and accurate board sign that had changed our nation. Back at the presidential palace, Ibrahim kept the framed cardboard signet at his desk. Whenever visitors entered Rita's office, he would gesture toward it. This, he would say, is our reminder. Active leadership matters if it doesn't reach the people who need it most. Therapy that began with one girl's quiet plea had grown into a wave, and the wavwa still rising. A few weeks later, Ibrahim arrived quietly without ceremony at a small community center on the Ijaf Ouagadougou. It was the same place where Fatu and her mother now spent many afternoons. Fatu catching up on her lessons, her mother teaching sewing skills to other women. The building was simple, but alive with energy. On the outside wall, a new mural showed a great tree, its leaves painted from dozens of colorful handprints, each belonging Tosamian, touched by the Solidarity Hands initiative. Inside, children's laughter bounced from room to room. Shelves, aftonated books, lined the walls, and a cockboard leaned proudly in one corner. Ibrahim walked slowly through the center. There were no trumpets, no cameras flashing, no grand speeches, just nods of recognition, smiles of gratitude. He wasn't here as a president. He was here to listen. In Asmel's room, he found Fatu at a wooden table, colored pencils scattered beside her well-worn notebook. Her small hands moved quickly as she drew, her face glowing with concentration. Ibrahim bent down, his voice soft, almost playful. What are you working on, Fatu? Shell looked up, startled for a moment, then broke into a smile. I'm drawing a school. A school, Ibrahim asked, lowering himself into the chair beside her. Tell me about it. With quiet pride, Fatu turned her notebook toward him. Aunt's page was a simple sketch, a long building with wide windows, a flag flying on the roof, and a playground out front. But what caught his eyes were few words written above the entrance in bold block letters. School for everyone, even if you're poor. Her voice was soft but steady. This is where I want all Thekits to go. Even kids without books, or shoes, or food, they can still come here. Ibrahim sat in silence for a long moment, her words pressed deep into Haishart. Finally, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. You know, Fatu hassid warmly, maybe one day you will build that school. And when that day comes, I promise I'll be there to help you open it. Her eyes lit up. A joy superior filled the room. So was the joy of being seen, of having a dream talk. Seriously, behind them, Maria just interred. She stopped watching the scene unfold. Quietly, she raised her fin and captured a single photo. Ibrahim leaning close to Fatu, her sketch between them, her face glowing with hope. A candid moment, a promise passing from one generation to the next. When Mari shared the photo later evening, it spread like wildfire. Her caption read, "A pencil. A dream, an apromise." The country responded on Sagain. Architects offered free design plans. Nooses pledged funding. Teachers volunteered their time. What began as a Keld's drawing quickly became a blueprint for reality. Soon, preparations for a groundbreaking sign began. A local family moved by Fat's story, donated a small plot of land. Volunteers arrived with shovel sand, bare hands to clear the ground. Donations poured in. Coins, bills, and supplies, even from children in distant villages. One letter written in careful handwriting read, "We don't have much, but we believe in your school. Please let us help." During this time, Fatu herself began to change. Her confidence blossomed. She helped younger children with their reading. She learned to stand in front of small groups and speak. She asked questions boldly. Step by step, she was becoming more than a symbol. She was becoming a leader. One afternoon, while reviewing new plans with Marie, Ibrahim leaned back in his chair. Anne smiled faintly. "It's strange, isn't it?" he said. "We set out to help one girl, but now she's helping us remember what leadership truly means." Marianne nodded, her voice steady but gentle. "She's not waiting for the future, Ibrahim. She's already shaping it." Ange was right. Across Burkina Faso, families told their children the story of the girl who once held a cardboard sign and ended up drawing a school. Months passed, and the dream that had begun in Fatu's notebook rose brick by brick. Volunteers mixed cement under Theot's sun. Teachers painted classroom walls. Former students who once sat on dusty floors now laid the foundations for new rooms. They weren't just building a school, they were building belief. Then came the day the nation had been waiting for. Under the wide shade of an acacia tree, the stage was set forth, opening of Fatu's future school. Local musicians played drums and flutes there. Rhythms dancing with celebration. Children in handmade uniforms stood in neat rows, waving tiny flags and allowing freely. At the edge of the crowd stood Fatu. Her white blouse and blue skirt were simple, but her eyes carried a quiet strength beyond her years. She scanned the sea of face nervously until she spotted Marie, who gave her a reassuring nod. And then she saw him, Ibrahim. He arrived without a fanfare. No red carpet, no loud announcement. He walked humbly through the crowd, shaking hands, greeting people like neighbors. In that moment, he was not just their president, he was son of them. When Ibrahim stepped on the stage, the murmurs stilled. In his hand was the framed cardboard sign. He raised it high, his voice carrying strong and clear. "This sign changed my life, and now it is changing the lives of thousands." Then he turned and called Fatu forward. Her steps were careful, her breath quick. When she reached high side, he placed the microphone in her hands. For a moment, she froze. They crowed. Before her seemed endless, but she took a breath. Her voice, soft at first, began to steady. "My mother always told me, fight for your dreams, even if no one else sees them yet. I didn't know if anyone would see mine, but you did, all of you. And now, mid-dream is real, because you chose to believe in it." She lifted a small book, her mother's old sewing notebook, filled with her own sketches and words. Inside the cover, in faded ink, was a single line she carried like a compass. "Knowledge is the greatest inheritance you can give our children." The crowd erupted in applause. But Fatu lifted her chin and spoke again. "This school is not just for me. It's for every child woothed. Their voice didn't matter. For every mother who gave all she had, and a very father who never stopped hoping for better. This school is for Burkina Faso. The cheers rose like thunder. Ibrahim stood beside her, visibly moved. "You are proof," he said, his voice rich with pride, "that we do not have to wait for the future. We can build it together with our own hands. And today, this is not an ending. It is a beginning." Photos and videos from that day spread quickly across Burkina Faso, then across the world. The image of Fatu holding her motor's notebook beside her new school became a symbol of hope. Headlines declared, "A child's cardboard signs sparked a nation's revival," but Ibrahim was thinking about headlines. Days later, he was already in another rural village, kneeling to accept a small notebook from a boy named Madu. "This is for you, Mr. President," the boy sagely. "We are learning because of what you gave us." Ibrahim smiled, looking Thebel in the eyes. "You don't owe me anything, Madu. You're proving that with right tools. People can build anything, even their own future." Behind scenes, the Solidarity Hands initiative grew stronger. More teachers were trained. More communities gained clean water and food. Yet in Home Sacros, Burkina Faso, the story wasn't about programs or policies. It was about a little girl who once stood in a crowded market holding a trembling cardboard sign. Journalists later wrote, "Today in Burkina Faso, not through country reclaim its soul, not through power, but through dignity." And in household Severier, parents told their children, "Don't forget the story of Fatu. Don't forget the girl who proved that courage can change a nation." Because it all began with a piece of cardboard. It began with trembling handwriting and desperate hope. And it continues with a school, with a promise, with a people will remember their soul. This story reminds us that true leadership is not about titles, but about walking with the people and carrying their struggles a sore own. If one leader can inspire hope, imagine what we can do together. If you'll found this story powerful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories, courage, compassion, and change to light. Thank you for watching, and see it in the next.